We have recovered 49 cannons from city dumps, from ditches, other strange places. We have bought some back from scrap metal merchants, and we have put them back at historical sites where they are being looked after. One, fire!
This is quite an important building, but it was not the first building that was used as a fort to protect Dutch interests, the VOC or the Dutch East Indian Company, and also to keep the Khoi out. The first building was actually about 60 meters from here, which was Van Riebeeck's fort, and that was built in 1652, almost immediately when Van Riebeeck landed here. But the fort was too weak. The building material was wood and clay and mud and grass, so it broke down, and by 1662 when Van Riebeeck left, the idea of this very castle that you're in here, that you saw here today, was then built. And if you look, it's a star-shaped, and it's built in a military style. And if you look at the surrounding areas where cannons was put out, it's really a very important building not in South Africa's social history, but also in South Africa's military history, because the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, all of those major formations under Dutch rule and the British rule and the Union rule were all operating from this Castle of Good Hope.
The castle was the headquarters for the army, and I'm not just saying the South African National Defence Force as we know it today, but even in colonial days, even when it was the SANDF, this was always the headquarters for that. So we've got the military museum that depicts the history throughout all those ages now, military history but also social history.
When the Europeans came, first the Spanish and then the Portuguese and the Dutch and the English, they aggravated that situation. Because for them it was about control of the seas. They wanted to get to the spices of the eastern countries, China, Japan, Indonesia, Jakarta, and all those places. And the Cape, the southernmost part of South Africa, was an ideal point for them to stop. So the fact that they built this fort here was built on the fact that they wanted to protect that interest. So as early as 1510 already, the Portuguese under Francisca Almeida clashed not far from here at the beach over cattle and over misunderstandings. And in that battle, over 60 of the Portuguese people, very trained soldiers, were killed by the Khoi people, who were only fighting with their cattle and with hardened sticks. So they didn't have swords, they didn't have bows and arrows, they only used their cattle and their military skills to fight the Portuguese. And that's why South Africa never became a Portuguese colony. That's why they went to Maputo. Even Van Riebeeck built this bush, wild almond bushes around the fort, because he wanted to keep the Khoi out. So Douman was one of the Khoi leaders, or one of the Khoi soldiers, realized that the Dutch people were here to settle when they start building the fort and building the castle. So he fought them in a series of wars, but they eventually lost the wars against the Dutch people, and so they also lost the land, because the Dutch and the French and the British operated on the principle that you invaded a land, there are people in that land, and you are conquering the people, then you also have the land. So it was about armed colonial invasion and taking over. It was not simply an innocent halfway stop between Rotterdam and between Java or wherever they went to, but it was really to take over the land, because they could see the beautiful cattle, the beautiful women, the beautiful landscape, the fruit, and so they used armed techniques, the sword and the gun, to conquer the people of Southern Africa. And in the series of other wars that also followed after that, the wars against the Xhosa, against the Zulu, and you've seen in the military museum that there's an exhibition dealing with King Cetshwayo, the Zulu king. He was defeated at Ulundi after he won the first battle, and hundreds, if not thousands, of British soldiers. The biggest battle that British people were killed in at the battle, and eventually the British brought in some fortifications, and they then defeated him at Ulundi. He was detained, and he was so-called housed or accommodated in the castle. But we know, if you look at that room, he was really detained in that castle to make a point before he met the Queen of England to negotiate the land deals, and that's why KwaZulu-Natal is there, because of that negotiation.
Such a lot of South Africans, even people that walk past here every single day, have never actually stepped foot into the space. I understand why. The space was built and designed to keep people out. It was built as a fort, and it was built to protect. But we really want to open our front doors and tell everyone that walks to Golden Arrow bus terminus that's across the road, or to the train station, or wherever people come from in South Africa.
First of all, if you look at the periods, there was the period before the castle, the Khoi and the San period. Then there was the period of the Dutch occupation of the castle for about almost 200 years. Then there was the British occupation from 1795. Then again, there was the Dutch coming back as the Batavian Republic, and then the British took over again from there, and then the Union of South Africa, and then the apartheid government, and then post-apartheid, where we are today. Now, all those periods are represented in the castle, so it's very significant that we put emphasis on all of those periods in equal terms, because it shaped not only the military history but the social history.
A lot of people say, do you want to rewrite history? Why are you doing that? We're not rewriting history. We are just telling stories of people that were also heroes, that were not recognized before. And we've done that in a tangible way with establishing the statues of the four kings or warriors that's now standing right in front of the castle when you enter, but also in an intangible way in the stories that we tell. So now we're telling story of master, but also that of slave, also of the freedom fighters. We are also telling the stories of the people that first occupied this land prior to 1652 when Jan van Riebeeck landed here.
Land reform, apartheid laws, the industrialization of South Africa, the homeland system, all of that can be traced back to that military history that's preserved in the military museum.
And I think what we've done over the last couple of years, I think since we've been a civilian structure at least for 4 or 5 years, and specifically for the last 2 years when we commemorated the 350th commemoration of the castle, we really tried to expand the narrative.
The idea of preserving the military history with the cultural history, with the industrial history, with the economic history is always very important for us, so that we don't tackle heritage in a disjointed manner, but that we understand that it is almost like a puzzle, that to understand the one part, you need also to have knowledge to understand the other parts, so that the entire social life is represented and understood by especially our young kids.
We've decided that the castle used to be a place of exclusivity, and the castle is actually a property that belongs to the people of South Africa. So if we want people to resonate with the property, we need to include everyone's story. We are PO Box 1 in Cape Town, so we pride ourselves as being sort of the beginning, the first colonial building. But prior to that, also a site where the Khoi and the San used to live and roam on. So everybody in South Africa, it's proven that the San and Khoi DNA is the oldest DNA in the world. So everyone in South Africa and even in the world has got some link to the castle. And by telling an inclusive story and telling a story that's important to everyone, that includes everyone in this country, and promoting shared heritage, that is how we want to include and transform the space, so that people feel that it belongs to them. And it's not just a space where people were tortured like in previous years.
There are, of course, other museums on the castle premises that people visit, but people always say ooh and ah when they go to the military museum, because I think there they understand that the military as they know it has different dimensions. The fights between, say for instance, the San and the Khoi is also military history. The first Dutch-Khoi war is also military history. The Battle of Ulundi is military history. And they are very, very intrigued by that. And very interesting how Khoi and Xhosa fought hand in hand against the British. And that story is not always told, but the story is there. Mandela often refers to, if you look at his features, he's got Khoi features in it, and 4 of the cliques in Xhosa language, comes from the intermarriage between that. And I think that's portrayed there.
Obviously, when you visit a space like this, it's a spiritual space, so everybody's experience of the space is different. However, we do have a wonderful tourism offering. People can decide if they wanted to walk on the ramparts and do their own thing, but I would highly suggest that people do a guided tour. Our tour guides are very experienced and quite entertaining. We do tours every single day, 7 days a week. We open every day of the year, and we do tours every hour on the hour. We also still perform the key ceremony while our resident guards perform the key ceremony, which is a traditional ceremony of what people would call the changing of the guard, where they actually did the handover of the key. And it's quite an entertaining and quite a nice experience. That happens Monday to Friday. And then we also have the firing of the cannon. That is very entertaining, especially for youngsters. And then, just to come and experience history and to come and look for a little part of yourself that started 350 years ago.
We want ordinary people also to come here, scholars, students, working class people. That's why we have, apart from the normal entrance from 9 to 5, which is 50 Rand for adults and 30 Rand for youth, and 8 Rand for pupils in a group. We want all people to have this castle accessible. But besides that, we also have special days, like on Heritage Day, the 4th of this month. The castle is free, so people can come in. On May Day, it's free for workers. So we have these open days where people can really come in and experience a part of their history that I think you don't understand when you just stand outside, because it looks very grey and drab, and if we see some soldiers and you think, can I go in there? But once they're inside and they hear the firing of the cannon, or they see the soldiers marching, or they see the museum, or they hear the birds, and they hear the kids screaming, then they understand that this is a living museum, and so part and parcel of their history that they need to explore more and understand more.
We've really been setting the trend for heritage sites to look at an expanded narrative.
No, I just think in Heritage Month and in Tourism Month, and the month where we have AAD, the African Airspace Expo, it's very important that people understand that all the developments that we see today, whether it's military, whether it's economic, whether it's cultural, all emanated from this place, the Castle of Good Hope. So let's truly embrace this and make this really a castle of good hope for the future.